Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever and whenever you are. And welcome to the fourth episode of Take the Points.
A true underdog podcast.
A true underdog podcast. I'm Wilson, and I'm here with Robbie and Steve. How you guys doing?
Doing great, man.
We got a guest on the pod today.
I shouted him out in the last one. This is our first guest. We had to pick the best guest to have as our first guest.
The shout out was my last biggest honor, and this is now my new biggest honor.
Well, this is a global podcast, right? I think we were just reviewing some of the listeners that we have this far. We are taking over the U.S. and the globe just one pod at a time. So we said, how can we take this pod to the next level? How can we have a Lions offseason to get us to a Super Bowl? Let's bring Steve in. He is our free agent addition here.
Yeah, dude.
Right? He's on a trial basis right now, right? We'll see how this goes. We'll feel it out by the end of the night. We'll check the ratings.
The fantasy
and then we'll make the call from there.
Dude, I'll rebuild every team in this city and get them to championship.
I love
Steve's here to stay, for sure. He's a recurring guest, so get used to it.
Know how to make me blush.
Well, welcome to the pod. We are glad to have you.
I'm pumped.
We're here drinking moonshine and talking NBA and Super Bowl preview today. So
yeah. Wilson just got back from a little trip with his family, so we're doing this a little late night to make sure we brought the latest of the NBA trade deadline here on Thursday.
I feel like this is super dedication. I literally had an 11-hour drive. I drove from Tennessee, got home, unloaded the car, packed up my recording stuff, and drove over to Robbie's mansion.
Okay, not a mansion. Let's be clear on that.
Wilson's the real MVP.
Yes, I would. Today, you are the MVP of the pod because you went above and beyond to make sure this happens. And I mean, of all topics we could talk about, for three underdogs to gather at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night,
it's pretty epic
to talk about just an elite, just supreme basketball team like the Detroit Pistons. I mean, what more could pull us out of our hibernation here to come to talk about just a truly stellar basketball team in the Detroit Pistons?
I mean, I'm rocking the vintage Detroit Pistons crew neck, but I want to throw up when I think about this team right now.
I was going to buy a new hat for the pod because I knew we were coming on here and there would be some video content. And on the way home, I was like, no. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to stop and waste my time.
I don't blame you.
I was too pissed.
Or your $100 on a new hat either. I'm loving the Tigers representation.
Thanks, man.
Right?
The D hat goes. It's universal.
Tigers, I would say, have gone through similar situation to what the Pistons are going through now. You think about Al Avila, some of what they've gone through. A lot of parity and similarities.
Incompetence.
There. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
But I would say that the Pistons are in the worst shape that they've been in my life. I mean, even talking through like the 90s teal Pistons, like even they had more excitement with like Grant Hill and then Jerry Stackhouse coming in. Joe Dumars was still on the team. Like it was some bad years, but I mean, we're halfway through the season. We have 6 wins. It's insane. And we just had the worst trade deadline that I think I've ever seen us have. When it was terrible.
Since the last trade deadline.
Since last trade deadline.
This reminds me of the Lions take when we were talking a couple of weeks ago about how like the biggest Lions game was the last game that we had, and then the next week was the next biggest game. It almost goes in the opposite in this direction.
Complete opposite.
The greatest, or I should say, the biggest fail of a trade deadline we have is just the most recent one that we've had, where now we're surpassing another trade deadline, another disappointment. Troy Weaver obviously not able to really pull together anything meaningful. We'll run through some of the details on the trade deadline. One thing I wanted to ask you guys too, would love your take on, is I think this has been really I want to say a quiet story in Detroit because the Lions did such a good job for the city of shielding this. If you think about when the Pistons were in the midst of their longest NBA losing streak ever.
27 games, I think it was.
Yeah. 28, right?
28, maybe,
I think it was 28.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lions at that point were starting to obviously rise in the playoffs, right? Stafford was coming back. I think Detroit fans, the Detroit fans had a moment there when they were totally dialed in. This team's horrible. We were almost cheering for them to lose just to showcase how horrible we are. Lions now out of the playoffs, obviously, right? Super Bowl coming up this week. NHL's on their All-Star break right now. Like things have really shifted to totally focus on the NBA, which would love to get your guys' take of like, what do you think led to just this incompetence for the Pistons, from ownership, from GM? How do you think we got to where we are today from a Pistons standpoint?
That's a great question.
I want to hear Steve's take first as the guest.
I mean, I don't know. it all starts at the top. I mean, you look at Tom Gores rolled out of a tanning bed and bought this team, right? Like he looks like, you know what I mean? Doesn't he look like a dude that like he's driving around LA in one of those Polaris Stingers with like the third wheel in the back and all that stuff, like the top open, listening to like The Who or some shit. Like that's what he's doing. And then he was like, I'll just buy an NBA team. So it starts up there.
Oh
and then,
my
right?
God.
And then Troy Weaver, like, I admit at the time when we hired him, I was like, oh, that sounds like Oklahoma City, great franchise, like, you know, a new expansion team. And they went to the finals. I mean, I guess they used to be the Supersonics, right? But they went to the finals. They have an ass load of draft picks from making smart business decision moves. And you thought Troy Weaver, like the word on the street, right, was he was like the big guy in the room about getting Russell Westbrook. Like, okay, cool. Like he can draft and do all this stuff. And then day one, I remember that first draft, 2020, you know, Killian Hayes, you know, obviously, right, wasn't
former
really,
Piston Killian Hayes too.
Killian Hayes. We're talking about a draft pick from less than 4 years ago, former Piston. But like at the time, that was an okay pick, and he made moves and got Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart in that same draft, and I was like, this is the guy.
Yeah, I felt that too. I will say, even in the moment at that time, I was like, why did we not take Tyrese Halliburton?
Yes.
I mean, that was the way. I loved that he went out and got us multiple first-round picks. We got Sadiq Bey, we got Isaiah Stewart. But even in that moment, I was like, why? You're taking this guy from France over Tyrese Halliburton, who goes right after him, which obviously now looks like the worst, one of our worst draft choices ever, as we waived him, you know, today.
And we did draft Darko too, and we're saying
right.
This.
That's
Darko, the context for anybody who may not be
the Darko versus Killian reference, because one could argue there. I agree with you in the fact that the Pistons still ended up winning that title. Could they have won more potentially, maybe by not picking Darko? We will never know the answer
Chris
to
Bosh
that.
would have been a good one.
But I mean, Tyrese Halliburton's going to be a perennial All-Star. He's one of the best up and coming young players in the league, and we took Killian Hayes over him. You know, that was basically his first move as
Plus,
our GM.
if you remember that draft, I think it was in the press conference after. I think they asked Weaver, you know, what was it about between the two of those players of why you chose not to take Halliburton and you ended up taking Hayes, and a lot of it was around shooting and athleticism, where if you were to compare that now, look at Killian Hayes versus Halliburton. Yeah, you're right, Troy. Halliburton was more athletic and could shoot the ball better, right? He's developed more into what initially he thought he was getting from Killian Hayes. Killian Hayes coming out, when he was coming out of France, he was a decent shooter. Like, he was a solid pick at the time. I don't think anybody was super upset.
No one dogged it.
I was.
I remember coming out of that draft, local media was like, Troy was cooking, right? Like, the one thing Troy was known for, which is what his background is scouting. That is what his background has been. But we've seen this in the NFL, we've seen it in the NBA, seen it with baseball as well. Just because you can scout college players doesn't mean you can effectively recruit and engage talent on the NBA level. Because if you look at his drafts, I would say over the last 3 years, Hayes was an obvious miss, right? The rest of the picks, I don't know if I can sit here today and say they were absolutely horrible picks based on the other picks that he's had. Like, if you look at Cade was a no-brainer. You knew that was going to happen.
You have to.
Ivy was going to happen, right? He's a local Detroit, ties with his mom, right? Like, that was naturally going to happen. Some of his second-round picks have been okay. But, I mean, just missing on that first pick, looking back now, that was just a domino of future things to come.
That was his biggest miss, for sure,
100%.
in the draft. Yeah.
From a drafting standpoint, for sure. He's missed on everything he swung on from a free agency standpoint.
100%. I was thinking about it today, and I wanted to ask you guys, like, do you think that Troy Weaver, can you name one good move? Like, oh, you look back and you're like, that was smart that he did that. Can you name one good move that he's done?
No. I don't even have to think about that. That's a no. Like,
no, not a single move. And he's made a lot of moves.
Yeah, and there's like some have just been okay. Okay, you know what I mean? Like trading for Bojan Bogdanovic was like, okay.
Right.
That makes sense, I guess, but it wasn't like a sexy, like it wasn't like a slam dunk.
But then you think about what did it lead to and what did it turn into today when we got rid of him for no first round picks? What did we really get back for him that we're going to actually use?
Yeah. And I like to think I don't know how we could even we'd have to take time and do this, but if you could back trail, right, like what we gave up in total for what we have now today.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Because we gave up to Kelly Olynyk for Bogdanovic. He was part of that trade, and Kelly Olynyk got a first-round pick in return today. Kelly Olynyk, dude, he looks like he just came out of gym class.
I mean,
in fourth grade with his hair all long. You know what I mean?
When it's very hard for your GM to be successful at trades when you deal with about 2 teams every trade deadline. I think, I literally think his bat phone goes immediately to the Knicks.
I think they're calling him, though.
Well, the Knicks don't want it, right?
No, they're calling him because they're like, this guy doesn't know. He doesn't have a clue what he's doing. Let's call up Troy Weaver because we're going to fleece him.
Hence, which we've heard a lot of, Al Avila 2.0, right? He killed the market for Nick Castellanos. He's killed it like, I guess I just couldn't trade him for anybody. Like, you set the market. Like, that's what makes the sign of a good GM. Yes, things come to you, but you have to be able to create that market. If you look at where Troy today was a perfect example. I have no problem with getting rid of the players that we did. If we would have held on to these guys today, I think I would have had more of an issue. But the fact that we even got rid of them, and then did you see the national response today from this? You have guys tweeting out, Pistons should not be able to draft, trade, sign, release anybody. I mean, just the embarrassment nationally on this team.
Yeah, it's not just disgruntled fans. I mean, everybody recognizes it. I mean, here's my thing. Like, yeah, you could say, okay, Bojan is 35. He's on an expiring contract. Like, who really is going to give a first-round pick for him for a half season? I would say, back to that, is let's take a look at some of the other, like you mentioned, the first-round pick that came from Kelly Olynyk. Let's take a look at some of the other trades that happened where first-round picks were in the mix. You mean to tell me that a contender doesn't want a scoring machine like Bojan who can shoot the lights out from three? And not even just today. We knew that this day was coming where we needed to move him because he's not helping us and his contract's going to be done. Any time in the last year or year and a half, we should have moved him. At some point in that time, we could have gotten a first-round pick, and we should have done it then. That's what being a good GM is looking, having a vision, thinking a few steps ahead, and making the move when it's the right time. If today it wasn't possible, that's fine. You should have done it a year ago then.
Yep, and that's a great point. It's like it's clear that he doesn't have a vision because you nailed it, right? If Bojan's not part of your long-term plan, and if you have this core four of Cade, Ivy, Duran, and Asar Thompson, who going back to the draft pick of Asar Thompson real quick, why would you draft a guy that can't shoot to a team that needs shooting desperately?
Yeah.
With a new coach that relied heavily on a team that was all about spacing, rotation, and three-point shooting. You didn't, again, that's the vision. You didn't surround your coach who specializes coming from Phoenix, and that was their specialty. You have 18 bigs on the team and guys that can't shoot, athletic, but can't shoot the ball.
Yeah, look at the league today. Everybody's shooting. Everybody's scoring 150 points a game. If you can't keep up, where are you going to be? You're going to be at 6 and 45 like we are. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're at.
Which I actually would have been okay too, because I think we're all kind of 04 Pistons fans. And Wilson and I talked about this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. Like, if you look at all of the successful Detroit teams, like we said, from Pistons or even Red Wings and Pistons perspective, right? It's been that like tough, going to work, bad boys Pistons. Like, that's what our mantra has been. I would respect it more in this situation if Troy Weaver would have come out and said, you know what, the league's going toward three-point shooting. Maybe we're going to be a smaller team that's going to be more of a drive and dish type team. But the fact is he hasn't done that. He hasn't gone all in one direction, which is why today you have these pieces that clearly don't fit together, where I would rather go down a path and fail and have a direction that we're going down and be able to say it didn't work than we look back over the last 3 to 4 years. There's no direction that we've gone, which is why we don't have an identity. You can't succeed if you don't take a solid step in a direction to at least try. I would respect the failure.
Yeah, and it comes back to vision. Like, let's just give a few examples of the clear lack of vision. Like, we got, at the same time as we were signing Isaiah, right after we did this, we signed Isaiah Stewart to a huge contract. We got Marvin Bagley for no reason. We got James Wiseman for no reason. Same player, basically.
Awful. Traded Sadiq Bey for James Wiseman too,
which is ridiculous because Sadiq Bey is he's a great 3-and-D guy, and he will be in the league for another decade doing that. And we got Jalen Duren in the draft as we had Marvin Bagley, James Wiseman, and then signed Isaiah Stewart to an extension. What are we doing? Why do we need all those guys? I mean, what are you looking to do? You need 4 big men who are never going to be on the court. They shouldn't be on the court at the same time. Like, really, any of those guys, except for Isaiah Stewart, could match up with maybe 1 or 2 of those guys. But you can't put them on the floor at the same time. There's no vision there. Other things, like we signed Joe Harris in the offseason. We waived him today. Had him for half a season.
Horrible.
Did nothing with him.
Terrible.
There's so many layers to. Steve and I have talked about this a lot. There's so many layers to the failure on the Joe Harris deal. I mean, we took ourselves out of free agency this offseason. 2 hours before free agency was about to open, we literally took on his dead body, used up all of our remaining cap space, so then another team could go out and sign Cam Johnson that Steve and I were kind of hoping that we would have signed young, athletic wing, right? You could have forced them to match the deal, which is what we said that the Pistons should have done. And you did that for what? Do you remember the press conference when Troy Weaver had with Joe Harris? He's going to bring us 3-point shooting. He's been in the league for a long time.
We're going to have three-point shooting. That guy,
he played like
rambles.
15 minutes total this season, and then we waived him.
Yeah.
I think it's just been an epic, going back to where did this start? Like, it's just been an epic failure from the top. I think ever since Bill Davison passed, obviously, right? And then his daughter took over and she was open with the team and said, I don't want the Pistons, right? And then she obviously traded. I think value of the Pistons is up 2 to 3 times what Gore's paid for it. He paid, $350 million for it? It's probably worth, $2 to $3 billion now?
Yeah, he made his money sell it.
That's how Tom Gore's made his money, too. Like, that's what he does is he's basically buys these shitty businesses on their last leg, brings them back, and then sells them for a profit. That's what he does. Like Tom Gore's, just sell the Pistons. Just do what you do best and sell it to someone who actually cares. And when Gore's came out the other week, sorry Wilson, when he was like, I talked to Monty a lot about rotations.
Probably not a good thing.
Why are you talking?
What?
That
what is happening?
That to me equates to the Lions, right? Like when they had like kind of the takeover happen, right? And you had Rod Wood that got up there, and the president of your football team says, I pretty much know absolutely nothing there is to know about football. That's a perfect precedent for our team. Thankfully, things have been surrounded on the Lions side, but there's so many parodies of these situations across Detroit sports where thankfully the Lions are turning the direction. The Red Wings are heading the right time because of Stevie Y came in there and said, hey, Illich, get the hell away from the Red Wings. This is my thing. There are too many cooks in the kitchen with the Pistons. Like, who is actually calling the shots? You're telling me that Troy Weaver wanted Monty Williams. All those reports that were coming out, I think that was a Gore's decision. I think it was an Arn Tellem decision.
Yeah, why is he even...
And for those that don't know...
an agent.
Yeah,
right.
What is he doing?
Why is he in the front office?
Right, and I actually feel bad for the Pistons in that situation where you have all these basketball minds that can't make a educated and well thought out basketball decision. So again, lack of vision. Who's running the show for the Pistons right now?
Do you guys... real quick question. Do you guys think it makes it easier, like today, right? Watching the front office of one of the teams that we love, and like this is Detroit, like we love our teams, every team, top to bottom, right? Good times, bad times. We've sat through the Charlie V era. We sat through the Tracy McGrady days, like Josh Smith, like, and I was rooting for these teams hard, and this is by far the worst it's ever been.
Oh yeah.
But do you think because we've seen it with the Al Avila era with the Tigers, we've seen it with Kenny Holland in the Wings, we've seen it with the Martin Mayhew, Bob Quinn, Quinn Tricia days with the Lions, like part of me thinks like it would be easier because we've seen this shit so many times, but like it's actually worse because we know what's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
And we know the only way out is epiphany somewhere down the line where someone says, okay, something's got to give. You mentioned too, like the Lions. Remember when they fired Matt Millen and then hired his assistant?
Yeah.
Like what? That's not change.
That's just an incompetency breeding more incompetence.
Exactly, and it's the same thing right now. Is you went on a 28-game losing streak. You're at 6-45. You're the bottom of the barrel. Your young players aren't developing. You have no shooting, and you trade your best assets for junk. Right? Quentin Grimes is okay.
I mean, it's 3 non-rotation guys for the Knicks, basically, and a couple of second-round picks that are going to turn into nothing.
Yes, exactly. It just compounds.
It's terrible. I mean, to me, it's embarrassing. The Pistons are my first love. It's like the first Detroit sports team that I fell in love with. Watching those Pistons in 03 when they were getting there, in 04, like watching that team
John
come
Barry
together.
days, baby.
Yeah. Dude.
Yes.
Delico Rebraca, love it.
Dude.
Bringing that one out of nowhere. I love that.
I feel like the old radio guy in Detroit, Alan Allman over here, when he talk all sensual at night when we talk about our favorite Pistons player, maybe a little Eldon Campbell in that 04 run, guarding Shaq.
And Mike James.
Right? I mean, but those guys were the fundamental pieces to this team. That's all we have now is we have a team full of Mike James quality players minus about 100.
Yeah.
That's the level of players we have right now.
We had a Pistons team at one point that had Walter Herman on it. You remember Walter Herman?
Oh, yeah.
And I liked that team more than I like this team.
Oh, yeah. That was like 2007, 8
Yeah,
or
and
something
Carlos
like that.
Delfino.
Yeah.
Like all these guys, like that was a better team than what we're watching right now.
Can we get some
You
love
got
for the
Anthony Tolliver?
I'd like to say I'm the only Pistons fan in the entire city of Detroit, and maybe the only person in the entire world that's rocking an Anthony Tolliver jersey. But I was telling Wilson this before the pod. You know why that is? Because Anthony Tolliver, right? Not the greatest player, I get it, but he was a hustler, right? He gave you everything he had on the floor that night. That, again, we go back to this identity conversation. Even if you fail, I want to fail with guys that I know represent the city and what the Pistons stand for. Think about the younger generation that wasn't around for the '04 Pistons. All they have known is failure.
I mean, the Pistons haven't won a playoff game since 2008, which is insane. That's been 16 years ago that they've, I mean, not what the Lions had 30 years, but I mean, we're halfway there already. We're halfway there.
And I remember going to the playoff series against Cleveland with Blake, right? When we got swept by the Cavs, they were the number 1 seed. And Blake Griffin played on one leg and gave it everything, dude. And I was at one of those games, and I was like, everyone's doing the ref you suck chant. Like, LCA was on fire. And we lost. We got swept right out of there.
Yeah.
But like that was like the most energy I've felt around the Pistons in a long time. And mainly just because like you had a guy like Blake Griffin going out there and just like putting his body on the line. And like you said with Anthony Tolliver, you respect that stuff.
But that was just still, I mean, I can't even believe that's an Anthony Tolliver Piston jersey. It's got to be the only one that exists.
This was a custom jersey make. I just want you all to know that my buddies that are listening to this pod know that how much I love Anthony Tolliver. Like the gift that we have of like, I think he was falling out of bounds one time, like swatting the ball back in. Like that's the hustle and like the attention and like the grit that we need. That if you think about, I think you said earlier too, like, are we used to this? Like to finish your question earlier, like why is this? I think it's because all the other teams in Detroit have made that turn.
Yeah, where they've established an identity. Where
you see a direction. Lions obviously well ahead, probably I would say followed next closely by the Red Wings. Yep. Then the Tigers, Scotty Harris coming in. He's done a lot of things when it comes to drafting and just having a vision, right? We're going to be a low strikeout team. We're going to stay in the zone. We're going to get pitchers that focus on the strike zone. Like that's an identity. It may not work. It could fail brutally, but there's at least a direction. The Pistons have now become this outlier in the city where I think people are just so used to this failure. It's almost like with the Lions. You're so used to them losing. It almost just becomes what you crave in a weird way where the Pistons are so bad right now.
Yeah.
You don't even good, bad. Like, I'll be honest. I wasn't shocked today. I actually was like, well, no. This is normal business for Troy. I don't know why anybody else would expect anything different today, as if he was going to masterfully become this great trade GM.
No,
he's done none of that to prove it.
100%. And you know what? He's been terrible, but he's just the bad person in Detroit with the Pistons for right now. Before him, it was Stan Van Gundy. I was pissed at him. He made some terrible moves.
Terrible.
I mean, before him, Joe Dumars made some great moves and then ended up making some terrible moves near the end of his tenure. Like, it's been thing after thing, person after person. Like, it's just been 20 years of trying to rebuild, failing, restarting, trying to rebuild. And
but at least Dumars, I would take Joe Dumars back in a second.
Me too.
Yes. It did not end well. He was in the middle of an owner transition. Karen Davidson did not want this team. Sure, he went out there and he went after it, right? He said, this is the direction I'm taking this team. We know some of the deals were wrong. The Iverson deal was the wrong deal to make.
I cried that day. I was hammered.
It was a horrible deal. It was horrible. But he saw the writing on the wall that the window was coming to an end. He at least had the guts to make a move and actually do something that meant something. What has our GM done, right? I think I saw a reference today of like, we're just shuffling around chairs on the Titanic deck here. Like the ship's going down. We're just switching out where we're sitting. Like we're the band there just playing. We got Arn, Troy, just sitting there as the boat's going down. But what do you know?
Yeah.
Here comes Tom Gore
there launching T-shirts.
He rolls out of his tanning bed.
But rolls out of his tanning bed. We're sinking? I'll just get out of here on my helicopter.
Or you know what? Why don't you guys jump on my lifeboat here and away we go? It's just a level of incompetence too. We haven't even touched on the coach of the Pistons right now. We haven't even touched on Monty Williams.
Well, yeah, we paid him so much money. Why?
Can someone tell me
and
why?
I want to like him too. I really want to believe in Monty. Like he's not a bad coach, right? Like the evidence is there. He took the Suns to remember the Suns in the bubble, right? Like one of my favorite gifts of Devin Booker, right? Laying on the floor, looking down, hilarious. Like that was a team. They established an identity, and like one of his big claims, claims to fame, for lack of better terms, is what he did with Mikal Bridges, right?
Oh yeah,
a defense first kind of wing player, and turn him into an offensive weapon. Like you can do that with Asar Thompson. Fantastic,
that's
right? But
thing.
I don't know, man.
Like he has it. He has that potential because he's done it before and we've seen it. He just needs the pieces. And there's two ways that you can build a good team. You can do it through acquiring players, which is kind of what super teams have done in the modern era, is like acquire guys who are already proven and then build around them, or you can draft and develop, and then also that helps you acquire players once you've drafted and developed good players. And I mean, Monty Williams clearly he can develop players.
Yeah.
So we have that ability. The Pistons have just been so bad at developing their picks. Even somebody like Cade, who has potential to be an all-star. Yeah, I know he got hurt and he missed a big season. But like he just hasn't, because he hasn't had the players around him. He hasn't been able to develop into the player that he can be.
Yeah. He's shouldering too much of the load.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Monty Williams, in my opinion, has been an epic failure this year. I think, yes, he's a great coach. He's got a strong history with Phoenix. He said flat out in his press conference, he would not be here if it wasn't for the money, and he's coaching like it. If you watch any of these games, his rotation has been very inconsistent. You go from Killian Hayes starting to benched to back in the starting lineup to released, all in the span of 100 to 150 days here. Like
no vision.
Right, no vision. Like obviously there's been a big topic of discussion on Cade and Ivy. Can those two guards play together, right? Cade obviously very ball dominant guard. I think Ivy's very, very similar, which is what we've seen. Ivy obviously a little bit more turnover prone. Cade's also been doing that a lot. They both require the ball. The question is, can those two operate on the floor together? We go back to this vision thing. And I was okay with the Ivy pick when it happened, just because I think the idea there was, let's see what happens. Let's kind of mix these ingredients together and see what comes out. But you go back and look now, those two players are so identical. Trying to put them in the backcourt when Cade is clearly your number one guy. Again, it comes back to this vision of kind of the parts and the pieces, just square peg, round hole, not fitting together. I think that's a really big challenge for the team going forward, because like you said, what makes a successful team? It's draft and develop, and also trades. We talked about it a lot with the Lions, a lot of parallels there. You've drafted great. Now you got to go acquire. The Pistons have not drafted that great and have not acquired anybody.
Well, you can't acquire great players as free agents until you are drafting well and developing players, because guys want to go play with guys that are exciting to play with. They want to play with a young guy who's like Devin Booker. Kevin Durant wanted to go play for Phoenix because of Devin Booker. Like, that's why. You think that Kevin Durant didn't have a hand in where he got traded to? Like, he absolutely did.
Kevin Durant's been trying to pick where he goes to.
He might be picking somewhere new here soon, too. Phoenix ain't working out too great.
Get started on Kevin Durant and that prima donna and how he literally has to handpick every single, you ever know
when you're a star, you
Kevin
can do
Durant's
that.
issue.
But I'm just saying that the point is,
People
though,
think
like,
LeBron does that. Every star does that.
guys.
That's how you get it, yeah.
But there's also the idea, which is, I think Detroit is, the Lions understand this. I'd say the Red Wings do too. Tigers not so much. There is some value in identifying talent that maybe others don't see, signing that person to a contract, and then watching them actually outgrow their contract in a way that puts you in an advantageous position. If you look at the Pistons, it has been failure after failure after failure of reclamation projects that have not worked out. Where's our young guy that no one saw coming up that we signed to a team-friendly deal because no one else was maybe going to give him the money, or we saw something in him and invested that then grew? You need some of those to hit, especially in the NBA with a 15-player roster.
Yeah.
Hello, Chauncey Billups, Ben Wallace. I mean, those are two
whole
guys.
roster.
Yeah, basically that entire roster except for Tayshaun Prince.
What was they said on the radio the other day? Yesterday was the 20th anniversary of the trade for Rasheed Wallace.
Oh.
And that was Joe Dumars. That's a vision.
Prime.
Right? Just like you said, that's a vision, right? Like, Rasheed obviously had his share of issues, right? Like, he was a high risk, high reward player. And Joe Dumars said, look, we got the guys around him that are going to keep him in check. And I'll never forget, I saw an interview right after we traded. Like, this is same as you, Wilson, like the 03 Pistons, where when I was like, oh shit, okay, I'm really into the Pistons, right? And I've never stopped. But I remember watching an interview with Joe Dumars right after we got Rasheed, and he was like, I told him, you come here and you play ball, I'll take care of the rest. I will take care of everything else. The
Beautiful.
PR, all that stuff, right? And even we look at going fast forwarding a little bit with the Pistons with free agents, who do you think we're gonna get? We're not gonna get Miles Bridges comes with baggage. He would be a decent fit, but
baggage.
They're not gonna bring him in because he's not a high character guy, and that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Right. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna probably give Tobias Harris 4 years and $120 million.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna vomit all over
my
this
gosh.
podcast We'll live stream it.
Oh boy, we might lose some of our 50 viewers in that, so we got to be
It's
careful
okay.
with that.
I'm going to predict right now we're going to get D'Angelo Russell and we're going to pay him like max money or something ridiculous.
Don't do that.
I'm going to predict that's what we're going to do. And
But that's all we can do.
How much money do we have in cap space? 75 million?
60, 70 million.
Yeah, I
It's
think
the most
we can
by
have
any
is,
team by a lot.
is 75 to 80. Now, don't forget, there's a lot of big roster decisions coming up as we kind of transition it. Okay, where do we go from here? You're gonna have Cade that's going to be demanding the rookie, supermax, whatever.
Jordan Ivey.
He'll get it.
The extension, right? Because that's what the worry is too. Cade's going to get that. You have to pay Cade at that point. Then the question is, will he stay in the city? Ivy's going to be obviously coming up for that potentially as well. Like, I'm tired of hearing about this flexibility stuff with the Pistons because they just don't have it. Like that's been the topic, right? Like exactly like you said, you got to have young core players that you're willing to deal to. There's no one on this Pistons team right now that to me is untouchable. Once you pick a direction you're going to go, you're going to have to trade your last good pieces that you have left to try to acquire. So if we're going to really restart this thing again, look at the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have 500 picks over the next 3 years?
So I counted in my prep for this show, right? They have 12 first-round picks. It's probably different now because I think they gave one up. They have 12 first-rounders through 2030, 29 total picks.
And they're
through
already
2030.
good. They're already
Are
they in second in the West or something like that?
They're playing Jalen Williams making $2.4 million this year as their second best player.
But it's
insane.
But that's where I think if you look at where Troy maybe would have been successful if it was already a well-established team and all he had to do was maybe draft, fill in guys to take in certain pieces. He is a great maybe member of a front office in a college scouting department. He's not the lead of a general manager, which do you think he's back? I have no reason to believe he's gone based on the fact that Tom Gores is nowhere to be found.
Why would you let him go and after letting him navigate a trade deadline?
Right.
He has to be back.
That's a good point.
So where do they go from here?
They can't go anywhere.
If GM Steve was in Troy Weaver's shoes right now, what would be your move this offseason? Assuming you're back, you're going to be the GM, Monty's not going anywhere. What would be the first or second move that you would make this summer that you think puts them in a position? Would it be a trade? Would it be a free agent signing?
You hope you get some lottery luck. Honestly, first of all, this is not a good draft, but you hope two things. You hope you get some lottery luck, and 1, 2, 3 guys start to separate themselves from the pack in terms of the draft class, right? Because you got a top 3 pick. Biggest issue is we're handcuffed with no movable draft picks. We owe the pick to the Knicks, right? Which means we can't. This year's good because it's within the protections, but we still couldn't trade this pick because technically we could win the rest of the games out, and that could go to the Knicks. So we can't trade 2024 until draft night. Can't trade 2025, 26, or 27 because they're tentatively owed to the Knicks, which means you can't trade 2028 because you can't trade back-to-back first-round picks.
Brutal.
It's
right?
insane.
Which means you can't trade a pick till 2029, and then you can't trade anything else because you can't trade a pick more than 7 years in the future.
Okay.
So you
Can you go ahead and write that down for me so I can
pick.
make sure? So you just can't pretty much.
You have one first-round pick.
Let me go ahead and give the recap for that. We are screwed.
Yes, absolutely screwed. Okay, so you have no pick. So what you hope happens is someone kind of jumps apart from the pack in terms of the draft, and now this 1, 2, maybe 3, hopefully not number 5, which we always tend to get. But if you can get top 1 or 2, hopefully there's some desire for that pick, and now that pick is more valuable. And whether you tag that alongside someone like Jaden Ivey and move it, I would love, maybe not so much a fit now with Fontecchio and all these other guys, but Mikal Bridges was my guy. That would be a guy that I think would fit awesome here. He's a Monty guy, right? Would buy into the system, build the culture. The rumor mill was that the Nets were looking for 4 first-round picks for him. I don't think they'd ever get it, right? But if you could suddenly have a valuable number 2 or number 3 overall pick, Jaden Ivey's starting to show a lot more signs of being a real good player in this league. Combining those 2 picks and your 2029 first, maybe that helps. But again, it goes back to the fact that we didn't get any first-round picks back in this trade today. We gave up our 2 best trade assets and got not even our own protected pick back, and it's been brutal. So you have to just bank on the draft, and then hopefully you find, like you said, a free agent, maybe someone like a Jalen Smith or someone who's a little under the radar. Patrick Williams, if he doesn't get picked up by the Bulls, comes in, and you can develop him. And now, like you said, you have a player that is playing above their contract value. And now you build around that, and you can move that in the future.
Yeah.
I think our problem is we get these guys that are solid players like Jaden Ivey and has a lot of potential, and Jalen Duren. who has a ton of potential and he's having like he had a 20-20 game, and he's like really showing out on the boards. I mean, we get these guys and we think this is who we're going to build around, but they're not there. They're not good enough. And then we don't develop them. And then we just hold on to them too long, and then they just kind of fade away into nothing. Or they become a great player somewhere else, a.k.a. Chris Middleton, Spencer Dinwiddie, who
Bruce Brown, KCP.
Like, exactly. Like, that's what we do. We hold on to them too long. We don't deal them while we have their contract and while we have the ability to, and then we just lose them. So I'm almost on the camp of, like, somebody like Jalen Duren, he's going to be a great NBA player for a long time. I almost think, man, do we move him and get some picks and do we get some of that draft capital back for guys like Ivy and Duren? I kind of think, unfortunately, we have to.
You have to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to be in acquisition mode of assets at this point, which is, I think, what we were all hoping to get out of today. I think everyone can realize you're 2 to 3 years from relevancy at this point of even having a pulse in the NBA, because you look at the NBA draft too. You got guys coming out that probably shouldn't be coming out. I mean, you bring up the example of those draft picks, Dinwiddie, like Brown. The problem there was we didn't develop those guys.
Yeah.
This is a common theme that we're seeing, right? Guys are here and not successful. They leave here and go on to be successful. That is a sign that you are failing to develop players. So if you're a young player coming here, we used the Jaden Ivey example earlier. Monty's done him no favors with this inconsistent play time. He was hard on him to start the year, really tough on him. And I'm not saying Ivey's some amazing player that's going to be a all NBA guard, but at least give him the runway and allow him to develop. And I think there's, like, that again comes down to this organizational failure from a Pistons level that's been going on for years.
Yeah.
Of being able to develop talent. The Lions had this for a long time until they finally came in, cleaned house, and said, like, we're getting these draft picks. Like, we can make this a desirable place if we can show that we can develop players.
And then they killed it in the draft.
And that's a great, the Lions are going to become a blueprint. I also think, to your comment earlier of, like, we let guys stay here too long, I think Detroit sports teams in general, we've had this problem where we overvalue our talent way more than what I think the market does. You look at someone like Isaiah Stewart, right? You look at even the Bogey contract was actually okay. It was what, $20 million a year. Not a horrible deal now, you know, when you see just like what the other NBA contracts are, but this has been a theme across all Detroit sports, right? Al Avila was famous for this for the Tigers, just re-upping these guys. Kenny Holland at the end of his tenure, just re-signing guys to 6-7 year deals that were Detroit favorites. I want a GM that's got some balls.
Yeah.
To go out there and make a move. And even if it fails, I would rather say that we had a move and went in a specific direction than just doing this idle state that we're in. I expect the same out of Brad Holmes this offseason, which we talked about.
Yep.
Right? I expect him to make a move.
Yeah.
Doing what we're doing now is great. You want to go to the next level, you have got to be able to put yourself on the line and say, I am going for it, whether it works or whether it fails. Yep. I would rather have a GM today, even if he went, I was not a fan of the Zach LaVine deal at all. We talked about this earlier.
Oh, God.
But at least at that point, you are going after somebody. And I think it would have absolutely failed. I would have hated the deal. I think LaVine is a cancer to the team. But he can't even do that.
See, I would have loved it because Zach LaVine is one of the maybe less than 20 guys in the league that's 25 plus per game proven scorer at 50% field goal percentage. I mean, there's only a handful of guys out there who can do that. But
cancer to his team, making $40 million a year.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully you win every game that he plays because he's only going to play 50 a year.
Yeah, that's the problem. I know we want to talk some other NBA trade deadline things before we do a little Super Bowl preview. So I think maybe we end this section on the Pistons unless you guys have another hot take here. I'm going to end it with my hot take.
Smoke it up, dude.
I think, and I don't even think that this is, I think this is a lukewarm take, as you called me out for something else earlier.
So it's not like your Michigan takes?
No, my Michigan takes are just legit. But
I don't have time for that. I don't have time.
We can do that some other time. But I would say that the Pistons are, at this moment, the worst franchise in all major sports. They have been the worst franchise for the last few years in all major sports. And I don't think it's close.
It's hard to find an argument to that. I can't think of another team
In terms of
that
like
type of purgatory.
self-inflicted wounds that have put them in this situation, I think that's a very valid thing. Like you look at someone like the Oakland Athletics that are now moving, like their owner doesn't give a crap. They can't, but that's not necessarily like the GM and team's fault. But I agree with you. Like the Pistons have put themselves in this situation. It is
100%.
squarely on Tom Gorse.
The Tampa Bay Rays would be another one too. I'd say is in that tier. But like you're splitting hairs at that point, right? Like,
did you say the Tampa Bay Rays?
Tampa Bay Rays, man.
Are you kidding? The Tampa Bay Rays have exceeded expectations on almost every sense of the
because
definition.
Their owner doesn't want to spend any money, so they have to.
They're still successful.
Right. It's on-field success, but everything else, no way. Look at Tropicana Fields.
Does anything else matter? I don't care where the hell I'm playing. If I'm winning a freaking World Series, or at least
they're not going to win a World Series. That's the thing. They're just going to get all these guys. It's the rest of the league's farm system.
I mean, I would say that I would much rather be the Tampa Bay Rays than I would the Detroit Pistons.
I guess I'm just saying from the stance of like
it's just a storm
they are
of crap.
right, and I guess part of that factors in is that they actually are a good team on the field and they can make the playoffs and they're in the toughest division. But you go to any Rays game and there's like 940 people there.
Well, that's a larger Tampa market issue.
Right. They just
because I actually think Tampa's a great example of a team that has operated within their means to be successful.
Sure.
They may not get over
I'll stand corrected there.
They may not get over the hump because they're limited, but they far exceeded all their expectation when it comes to their salary cap there's no salary cap in baseball, but just like their team salary cap that their owners put on them. But
I think there's different factors that make a good franchise.
Right.
And the Pistons,
they have terrible ownership, I guess I'd say.
The only thing the Pistons have is fans like us that are willing to spend 40 minutes to talk about them. That's about all they have going, and we are dwindling day by day by day.
100%. People make fun of me for being a Pistons fan.
This was the peak of our season too, by the way. Like trade deadline, like the Woj bomb's coming out. I know poor Wilson's driving home, and we're just like, I'm like, Bojan's gone. Burks too, and
all your texts were being read through my car from Siri, and my wife sitting there with her baby listening to this.
Why is Wilson calling you baby? No, that's bogey, honey. That's
bogey. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Do we want to talk a couple other things from the NBA trade deadline before we go into Super Bowl? I just have a couple notes on who I think were some of the winners of the deadline.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I have 4 teams written down that I think were winners in this deadline. I would say number 1 is probably the Knicks. I mean,
100% agree.
Already a really great team with some huge potential, especially if Randall can come back at 100%. But then now they've added some really great shooting with Bojan and Burks.
And they gave up all those first-round picks. Oh, no, sorry. Never mind. They didn't. Go ahead. Continue on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, I mean, I feel like they by far and away win the draft for giving up nothing and getting some great shooters.
And I thought they won right just back when they got OG Anunoby. I was like, that's like a slam dunk.
I saw he's hurt tonight. He's going to be out for a little while.
Yeah.
Which makes sense even why they did the deals that they did today. Because, again, that's a team that is aware of what
Jalen Brunson's just a dog, man. Like, he's got that dog in him. Like,
the fact that
he's a winner, dude.
The fact that he hit free agency when he did, I don't know if you'll see a player of that caliber that will ever hit free agency again. I think it'll have to be like a trade, sign and trade, because guys like that just don't hit the open market.
Super rare.
Right. Yeah.
Which again shows the incompetency of a team to let him walk. But I would agree with that. I mean, I think their team is set up for success. I think the Knicks have always had a weird reputation, right? Where like they haven't really been good in a long time. The Carmelo years were wasted. I mean, they have not really. Again, that's also some incompetency on the on the ownership side. But when you have Troy Weaver on the other end of the phone, like you said, we're picking that bad boy up and saying, give us everybody you got.
Like, hold on. It's Troy.
Yeah, everybody. It's Troy.
I gotta take this.
It's
but
Troy.
see, I love that. I'm actually rooting for the Knicks now this year. As they become, since I can't root for the Pistons, they're the team I'm rooting for. I love the way that they've built. They haven't really built with the draft like you think of the guys that they've got, like Randall, Brunson. Like they brought these guys in. But I think that's a cool way to build a team too. Like it just shows some savviness. And
they got draft assets too. That's where like they have that's what I wish the Pistons were like the Knicks. Like they have a good squad and they have an ass load of draft picks that they can move. And I think if you like the Knicks now, wait till the summer. I think they're getting Donovan Mitchell.
Ooh.
That's who I think they're bringing.
That's another guy that the Pistons could have drafted, but we took Luke Kennard instead.
Okay.
No, he just had a great
You
workout.
had to turn it. You had to turn it that way.
He had a great workout, didn't miss a shot. But you know what? Luke is just, is he good? Yeah, I mean, look at what he's providing for us now. 3-point shooting.
It's amazing.
That bald head of his. Wow, just elite player. Elite.
Wait, Luke Kennard's bald now?
He's balding, yes. He spent time in Detroit. What do you
he
expect?
he didn't change.
He should be
He
bald.
should,
but
yeah.
He
He's
Not
hanging
to shame
on.
him.
Yeah, he's hanging on.
Yeah.
And he shouldn't. Okay.
He's making way more money than me, so because I don't have a job.
All of us combined.
He's got to bring it up every podcast.
Yeah,
We're going to have a note.
That's right.
and Wilson
Even
bring
if you did, trust me, as people with jobs, we ain't making that kind of money.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, true. I would say that my second winner of the draft is actually Charlotte. They're dumping. I mean, they got rid of Scary Terry. What was that? A little over a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they got back Kyle Lowry, which isn't doing much for them, but they got a first round pick there. And then today they dealt PJ Washington, and they got back actually Grant Williams, and they got a first round pick.
Yeah.
I mean,
Gordon Hayward.
They traded
They
Gordon
traded him today, too.
Yeah,
And they got Seth Curry back.
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean they're done. They're clearly done. This is an example of a team who's obviously not going to do anything this year. They're dumping their assets, but they're getting back picks.
Yeah,
and they did it successfully.
It's a punt. They're just punting this season.
Yeah,
And they're doing everything they can to reload, which the Pistons haven't done last year or the year before or this year.
You know what's funny is when we talk about the winners, we're all doing it. We can't help but come back and say, well, this team did great. Damn it, the Pistons didn't. It just, we have to continue to reference back of the Knicks did great, Pistons stink.
But it's perfect examples of good leadership versus bad.
What to do, what not to do,
Yeah.
all within the same day. There's just so many different views on it. I love it.
It's just like obviously the Knicks are in acquire mode. Charlotte's in, get rid of you whatever mode you're in, you have to just go all in. Once again, it comes back to vision. Like you just have to know where you are, assess where you are, and go for it with that. The next team that I put down as a winner is the Phoenix Suns. They've struggled with depth for a while.
Because they traded everybody away to get KD.
But they picked up a couple guys that will go on as like really under the radar. Nobody's talking about Phoenix Suns moves in this deadline at all. They're not sexy moves. They got David Roddy, who's a guy who can come off the bench and give you some good minutes, and they got Royce O'Neal, who can come in and he can get hot and he can go score 20 points on any random night because that dude can shoot. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the perfect thing that the Suns needed to do to add some depth. And obviously, they're still looking to contend right now. They're struggling a bit, but they're looking to contend with the squad that they have. And I think that they did exactly, once again, understood their position and did exactly what they needed to do today.
Yeah, I hope it all falls apart because I want Devin Booker here. But
yeah,
that's just a pipe dream.
I think what's interesting about them is they're a team that they understand the situation. Their window is open and it is closing, and they have to go for it now.
Yeah.
And they have an owner that came in there that said, we are going to go for it. And letting Monty go. I mean, you just think about the decisions that they've made.
Yeah.
They've taken a direction and said, we are going NBA title or bust.
Yeah.
They may not get there, but the fans understand we are all in. We are doing what we need to do. You can't help but respect it. Do I think they'll get there? I don't think they have the depth. I don't have full confidence. I think there's just some other stronger teams in the NBA. Just you look at obviously, like you look at the Clippers, you look at the Celtics, you look at the Cavs are starting to roll. You look at Oklahoma City, the Timberwolves.
The Timberwolves, yeah.
There's like the league this year,
yeah.
right? Yeah, the league this year is just it's a crowded league up at the top. But like you look at a couple 2-3 years ago, even with the Suns. They were the Warriors, like those
the Bucks. You knew who was going to be there.
That was kind of the core three that was going to be in contention there. Boston obviously has just been there for a couple of years because they have a competent GM. They have obviously just like a great core of players. So I'll just be interested to see what happens with them. I feel like they're going to be what Kevin Durant does, right? He goes, he's the shining star. The team trades everything to get him, and then you realize you get there and you look around and you got two guys. You don't have your bench players there with you.
They were playing. They were doing like 7-8 man rotations for a little bit.
They're calling Robbie up to get minutes.
Right, that's fine. Call me Luke Kennard. Let's go. Fire it up.
Robbie will give some buckets. He still never played with me because he keeps backing out. But
yeah. I've been doing more squats. The quads are going to get sore. I got to be careful when I'm playing basketball.
Yeah, right.
Everybody knows when you get a little bit older and you start playing a little basketball here and there. I worry about the Achilles. I worry about the quads.
Oh
I got to
my
be
gosh,
careful,
come
okay?
on.
I'm just being honest.
Yeah, got to start taking baby aspirin.
That's
every day,
right.
you know?
Listen,
We're not 40 yet. We're not quite there.
Well, I'm getting
I'm close.
We're getting close there, buddy. I don't think we're that far away.
Yeah, don't say it like it's that old, dude. I'm like a year and a half away.
Okay.
So all in all, our recap there is that the Pistons are in a horrible position. Pretty much every other team in the NBA does it the right way, and the only thing we can do is hope and pray that either Troy Weaver sells the team or decides that. Tom Gore sells the team, or Troy Weaver decides to leave, or Tom Gore fires him, which is probably not going to happen.
Man, you put that really nicely. There's a few other things that I would say we could hope happen that I'm not going to say.
Yeah,
right.
Terrible.
No,
Right,
we are a family-rated
We're a
podcast
family show.
here.
Yeah,
Okay?
I haven't dropped an F-bomb today. I was really nervous about that.
No.
I was,
you're okay.
but I know because we're a family show. Could foresee mutual parting ways between Troy and the team in the offseason. I could see that, maybe. But regardless, that's on Tom Gore's. Like, if you were going to do that and say, like, hey, we'll do this amicable split at the end of the year, like, just can him. Just can him.
Keep your eye on Monty, too. I'll be real curious what happens. I could see
That's
him-
going to be tough to get out of, man.
I know, but he may walk. There's a chance he could walk away. He's still
true.
He's still getting paid, right? Like,
Yeah.
he could say, I want to walk away. What he made, $10, $12 million this year, whatever his salary was.
Well,
it's not bad for a year, and
For
say
winning
you're going to
6
walk
games.
away.
Yeah, right.
Man, he's winning
$2 million a game.
$2 million a game he wins.
$80 million contract. You decide, hey, I'm going to walk out. Hey, give me a buyout. Give me 30. I'll walk out the door. Okay, sounds good. You just made $42 million in 1 year. That's
Man.
Did you have another winner from today?
Bleak. Yes, I had one more winner, and that would be the Pacers, because I think picking up Siakam is amazing, even though he's, I think he's going to be a free agent in the offseason, right?
Yeah.
They have a chance at getting him back. He could go somewhere else, but if they get him back, then I think that they were a big winner, even though that wasn't on the deadline today. Picking him up is a good move for them to pair with Halliburton. So, I mean, I feel like they are still a winner if they're able to keep him next year.
If I can give you a loser,
Yeah.
that's not the Pistons, right? Because that's obviously the the clear front runner.
the easy one in the room to pick on.
Yeah, we could just take that one right off the list right now. I was surprised that Oklahoma City didn't do anything but bigger.
Oh, yeah.
I really wanted them to go and get Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah.
That would have been
Oh, man, that would set them over the edge.
That it would exactly would have sent them over the edge.
They got Gordon Hayward.
Which
It's
is fair.
fine,
It's
but
fine.
it's not-
Yes, it's
yeah.
not like compared. And I think part of it is the context that we talked about earlier. They have so many draft picks that when you think you can't possibly, like, the Thunder can't draft 6 more dudes in the next 2 years.
No.
They can't. Like, there's no roster spots. You can't pretend like there's the G League's full. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, you
yeah.
can't do it. So you have to start moving these picks for a dude. And I like just
That's
looking
true.
at the trade deadline breakout. I thought Lauri Markkanen would have been a slam dunk there.
fit.
And they're in second place in the West. They're young. They're hungry. Like, they're a good squad. And I'm just kind of bummed that they didn't do a little bit more.
I think if they would have gotten Markkanen, they would jump into one of the like top 3 in contention for this
100%.
year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of a team on the cusp.
Mm-hmm.
GM saying, all right, when are we going to pull the trigger? But you're right. You have so many picks. But again, you look at the difference there. Young assets, young players, young core.
That's
Like-
true flexibility.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what flexibility
And a
is.
vision.
And they're a fun team to watch.
Yeah, man.
I mean, we obviously don't see a lot of games here being in Detroit, just obviously because not all their games are nationally televised,
I do
but it's
because
awesome.
They're
They're so good.
Lay in bed almost every night on my phone and
boy.
watch. I've got the NBA app on my phone, of course, and I lay in bed and watch.
I wasn't-
So
I
I watch
wasn't-
the Thunder all the
I
time.
wasn't sure where that was going. I'm
Yeah,
glad.
no. I lay in.
That
I lay
took
in
you a
bed
while
with
to get that out there, buddy. I was a little
sorry.
worried
Yeah.
what else you were going to say there.
I lay in bed with my sleep apnea mouth guard and my nose strip, and I'm out in 5 minutes.
But as we noted, none of our wives listen this far in the podcast, so we
No.
can pretty much say
Oh,
whatever
yeah,
we
I
want
know,
to, and
yeah.
no one's going to listen.
I will say my wife's probably at home right now reading. She's been in this book club. She's on her 4th book already of the year, so I got to give her a shout out for
Wow.
that. Yeah, I know. 4th book in February. It's crazy. But she's probably at home right now reading in her Last Night Saved My Life sweatshirt.
Let's
it's her
go.
favorite sweatshirt. dude.
Wilson's band,
That's
Wilson's
my
Yeah.
band.
Yeah.
I think I already plugged it, but I'll plug it every episode. Check
You
out my
should.
band.
which I
Last
believe
Night's
we
Saved
knew
My
them in our intro to the pod, right?
It's actually a unreleased demo of a song that we might record.
So
Oh,
did
okay.
you and Taylor Swift decide to announce a new album coming out in the
Yeah,
same
oh yeah.
week?
She,
Wow.
well, she's featured on our next album for sure.
Oh, speaking of Taylor Swift, should we
That is a good segue.
talk
Transition. Let's
a
do
little
this.
Super
Segue.
Bowl here?
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch. I don't think I'm going to watch.
We got-
the sting from the Lions loss is still there.
We got the Kansas City Chiefs facing the Lions this week. Oh, I'm sorry. We got the Chiefs facing the Niners this weekend. Sorry, I haven't. To me, it's still halftime. I'm still sitting in Levi Stadium, being up 17.
This is the least excited I've ever been for the Super Bowl.
I 100% guarantee. I agree. I told you earlier in the week, or actually, I waited right when you got back from San Francisco. We obviously had a long chat, and I was like, I will never get over this. I will never get over that game. That's Robert Ory, Big Shot Rob, dude. Oh. That's the Big Poppy Grand Slam. That's all these things that just live in my head. And I think about these things 5 or 6 times a year, just no matter what.
It's your Roman Empire.
It is, yeah. But in the most negative way.
That's what Steve's in bed at night thinking about. Yes. Why did Benoit pitch to Big Poppy? Come on.
Dude, I swear to God, sometimes I'll be laying in bed and I'll just be like, oh, man, we should have won the World Series in 2013. And it keeps me up for a little longer. And I know Robbie, a funny thing that Robbie told me earlier about that is that he's never watched that replay in his adult life. And I commend you for that because
it's too painful.
I'm a glutton for punishment, man. And I anytime it's on, I just hate myself for it.
I've gone back and forth on this my fanship for the Super Bowl this week. I'm sure you guys saw Alex Anzalone wrote a really nice players tribute in the Athletic, which I think was really great, kind of saying Dan Campbell told these guys, you got to watch this game because you have to realize that this is what we strive to be.
You got to feel the full pain.
Right. Yeah. I think the reason I'm not super into the Super Bowl is I just really don't have an affinity for really either of the teams. I think when the Rams played the Bengals, I was pulling hard for the Bengals just because it was kind of we talked about earlier in an earlier pods, typical city Detroit. I hate Matt Stafford. I did not want him to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, right.
This time around, I don't want the Niners to win because I just don't want them to win. I actually would prefer that they have a whole situation with Brock Purdy. They don't know what they're going to do. Imagine all the dominoes that fall if they don't win this weekend.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan's starting to get that reputation of
can't win the big one.
Can't get to the big game. Then he gets to the big game and he folds. Then you look at Mahomes. If they win this weekend, it's just adding to his greatness.
Yeah.
Andy Reid may walk if they end up winning. I think I'm actually pulling for Kansas City here just because I don't want to see San Francisco win. I'd rather see them just fall into turmoil. But I'm kind of with you. I just don't have the juice this weekend for the game.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch because everybody does. I just don't want to see any highlights of the Lions game and how the teams got there. That's going to be a tough pill to swallow, but that's the reality. We got to get over this shit and move on and focus on next year and trying to get to a freaking Super Bowl because there's so many thoughts. I think on our next pod, we can talk about Lions offseason and everything Brad Holmes said this week. But I'm kind of with you. I will watch. I will check out the commercials. You know what I mean? We'll do the we'll make some of our bets.
I'm not going to be 100% checked in.
No,
no. And I know it's with the kids too. It's hard.
Yeah, I probably will watch until just after halftime, and then I'll just follow along on my phone. Yeah. I feel like the big for non-Detroit people who are watching the Super Bowl just like it's any other year. The big football question of this Super Bowl is is Patrick Mahomes going to establish himself as one of the greatest of all times and go out there and win another one? That's what this Super Bowl is about: legacy and dynasty for the Chiefs. And then, like you said, it's for the Niners. It's about, can Shanahan get it done? Can Purdy be this underdog, this guy that everybody counted out and win a big one? That's really the two storylines on both sides in this. And I would be with you, Robbie. I'm pulling for the Chiefs. I want to see the dynasty, the legacy. I like Mahomes. And, as much as people have some people have ragged on the Kelsey and Taylor Swift, I feel like it's just all been building to this with the NFL script, right? Taylor Swift has been so involved in seeing her watch Travis Kelsey win the Super Bowl. I feel like that's what's going to happen, and that's what's going to be the biggest moment for the NFL is if that does happen.
Yeah, the Super Bowl is the Super Bowl. I think it's weird as a Lions fan now thinking we could have been there, but I think it. Yeah, I think the Chiefs. Mahomes has just put this team on their back. He's one of those guys. You hate him when he's on the other team, but you would freaking love him if he was on your team.
Yeah,
and I think even people in Detroit get obsessed with this. Oh, we got to find our Mahomes. Mahomes is a once in a generation.
You don't just find those guys,
right? And I feel like I want to say he's a bit of an underdog in this situation because his team around him. Their defense has been great, but really they got Kelsey, Pacheco, they don't really have a ton else on that team, right? They got just a collection of receivers that keep dropping balls, and he's still finding a way to get through. I mean, their defense has been the difference this year.
Has stepped up.
Right. I mean, from that first game that they had against us, like that was a low-scoring game. You knew the offense wasn't going to be the same there. I think it'll be a good game either way. I do tend to think that just the experience from Kansas City will prevail here, but so whatever happens with San Francisco, they're facing a season worth of questions in the offseason here. Like, this thing could crumble if they don't win this year. They got a lot of contracts, a lot of guys making a lot of money. So speaking of making money, boys, Steve, we're bringing you into the equation here on our betting. Go. Wilson and I have just, let me tell you, for a guy that doesn't have a job in Wilson, we are, as his friend, I'm just doing a great job of helping contribute to his beautiful son's college fund here. Right. Wilson, do you want to give him a recap of all of our bets over the past couple of weeks and the financial gains that we've had from them?
Oh, absolutely. For anybody who has never listened to the show before, what we have been doing is every week we make a bet for each other that the other person has to bet. We're not doing huge dollars. We're doing $10 a unit. We did do a double unit for the Lions NFC Championship game that they lost. So
thanks for that one. I was there and I lost $20 as well. That's great.
That's just salt in the wound.
As of right now, Robbie has lost me $40. And I have lost him $40.
Awesome.
So
sick.
So we're trying to win these bets.
It's my kind of crowd.
So Steve, we're gonna have probably you kick us off here to start us off. Obviously, there's no question what game we're betting this week. We're gonna go with the Pistons. No, I'm just kidding. So
no.
We're doing Super Bowl. Only Super Bowl.
I was gonna go Arsenal versus No, I'm not doing
odds have to be plus 500 on the
plus
bets.
500 have to be at least plus 500. So what do you got for us, Steve?
I'm going to let you guys know that when I gamble very irresponsibly in the sense that I use a lot of emotion, a lot of my heart, sometimes data, not enough, and sometimes a blend of data to where it's so dangerous that like the two just don't. It's oil and water.
You're not doing 15 leg parlays out there though, are you?
Today, no. But I have, absolutely.
Your paralysis by
Dude,
analysis.
you see those screenshots though where someone's like, I made like a $15 bet and won $32,000. Like that could be one of us one day. You know what I mean?
People also win the lottery.
Yeah, I know. So I do that once in a while when I'm feeling a little jazzy, but
I love it.
I love the confidence. I love it.
No, so it's a 3-leg parlay. It's plus 511. I'm gonna start in opposite order where I have it written down. Travis Kelce, I'm going under 72.5 receiving yards. My logic here is that he's been the focal point, the Chiefs basically, and Taylor Swift, obviously. That whole storyline, I just feel like it's going to deliver an underwhelming result.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? Like, maybe he gets a touchdown, and that's fine, but the receiving yards, like, maybe he just falls a little short, doesn't have a huge game, right? 72.5 is fine, right? He could have a 70-yard game, and that's great for any tight end. But that's where I think he's going to kind of net out.
Tough. That's a tough one for me to swallow, Steve. I don't like it.
I know, but it's the Super Bowl. The weird things happen in the Super Bowl. You know that.
Kelce's their only weapon.
I know, and anybody you can depend on in the Super Bowl is typically the guy that doesn't deliver, right? It's the unsung heroes.
Okay, so Wilson's taking this bet. I'm going to take Wilson's, but go ahead.
That also leads into Rashee Rice, anytime touchdown scorer.
Love Rashee Rice.
That's plus 135, so that's a big boost on this parlay. And then Kansas City plus 2.5, just the spread. You can take the points, guys.
Kansas Love the podcast. City, there it goes again.
Cool.
When you're giving Kansas City points, that's hard to pass up.
I agree.
Right. So those three, that's plus 511. That's where I put my money at this week.
Oh, I love it, man. I'm gonna take it, and we have to take it. So you have to. Take
I know. We signed a contract before this pod. I'm forced to take it. I will begrudgingly take it, but yes.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna go next because we have one that is exact, and that is Rashee Rice anytime touchdown. I took that as well, but then this one is a little bit opposite. I said Kelce 60+ yards receiving. We can still both win, though.
Yeah, okay.
He's just got to get somewhere between 60 and 72.
Yeah, that's
fair.
Fine.
He could do that.
That works.
Plus,
there's a Goldilocks zone.
Right. I mean, the interesting thing is, Steve, are you going to bet your own as well?
Oh, I already did.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think? I came
the
here
reason
without
I
money
asked
on the
is,
line?
like, when we've been doing our bets, I've been only betting what Wilson has been giving me.
Oh, I
I've been doing
gotcha.
both.
Yeah, I have not been betting my own purposely because, one, I probably can't afford it. Two is that I just like to come back every week and say, thanks, Wilson. You cost
Episode
me,
511,
you cost
Wilson's
me
gambling intervention.
Yeah, right. We actually can no longer produce this podcast because we ran out of money to support it.
Dude,
Wilson pawned the microphones for...
I'll show you my FanDuel and my DraftKings account, and you'll see I hit pretty consistently. So this has just been a little bit of a slump.
Yeah, that'd be nice to see that on here once in a while.
But
yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
okay,
man, I swear I make it. Yeah, 9 out of 10 times, except for the past 9.
Okay, whatever. So my first two: Rashee Rice anytime touchdown, Kelce 60+ yards receiving, Debo 4+ receptions, and Patrick Mahomes on 25+ alt rushing yards. So,
Okay.
I mean, that right there is plus 700.
Yeah.
Pretty simple, only 4 legs. I think it's possible.
Yeah, I like it.
I like all the. I think those are good.
Yeah.
Good plays. I mean, I feel like we're gonna get a common theme on what direction we're going with some of the players, just because I think like those name guys is who you kind of go after.
You gotta use the big name guys.
All right, now you can criticize me. So my pick 'em here is plus 1,000 here.
Ooh.
So I got
Daddy likes.
a 4-leg parlay here. And I'm going to give my stats. Obviously, I feel like I'm probably going to be the guy that's going to have way too many stats when we go through this, but that's okay.
That's great.
First is going to be Pacheco over 67.5 yards. What's the one thing that San Francisco struggles at doing? They saw it in the Lions playoff game, right? And against the Packers.
Stopping the run.
Stopping the run,
Yep.
right? So I think Pacheco is just going to have a big game because 7.5 yards. It feels like a low number to me. Lions ran all over San Francisco.
Yeah, they can't stop a fart coming out of Wilson's butt.
Right, exactly. Is that the third podcast in a row now where that's
Yes.
just mentioned?
It's just
I
such
think
a
it
good
is.
quote.
Yeah.
that came
Yeah,
out
that
naturally.
was. I laughed out loud. I almost swerved off the highway.
Yeah, I think
when I
he
listened
did
to
actually text us
Thanks,
that.
guys.
Next is going to be a McCaffrey anytime touchdown. I just think
Okay.
that. Okay.
I think they're going
Yeah.
to give him the ball near the goal line.
I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's a no.
that was one
Yeah.
of those I had to pick something that had decent odds with the anytime touchdown score on there. You're going to get plus odds on
It's
that.
safe too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next is going to be Noah Gray over 1.5 receptions.
I almost took that exact thing. I love that.
I just think you look at how the offense is structured, there's always that guy in the Super Bowl that you don't expect to
Yeah.
do something. And I think Noah Gray is not going to get a lot of focus in this game. I think a lot of the attention is going to be paid to obviously like the other receivers in this situation. So I just think it's the odds
Yeah.
were good there. I think it was like plus 100 or plus 200. So that helped boost this up to 1,000.
That makes sense. Super Bowl, you got to break out all the stops.
Right.
You know.
And then I went Brandon Ayuk over 4.5 receptions.
Okay.
And I'll give my take here on why I think this is. San Francisco is going to have to make a business, or I'm sorry, Kansas City is going to have to make a business decision here, right? Who are you going to stop in San Francisco?
Is it going to be Debo or Ayuk?
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to focus on the run, which means you're going to be crowding, right, the box there, right, which is what we saw a little bit, obviously, over the past couple of weeks. Or you pretty much need to say, are you taking out Samuel, or are you taking out Ayuk, or are you taking out Kittle?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I picked Ayuk here, because I just think he could be the guy that maybe gets a little bit less focus here in 4.5 receptions. Again, like we said with the Lions game, I don't care if it's a yard, I don't care if it's 10 yards. Just
great.
give me a reception. So I think they're going to be forced to make some defensive decisions there. I just hope Ayuk maybe is the one that gets the benefit from that. So yeah.
Sounds like I'm winning $150 if I'm going to win yours and yours.
I love it.
That'd
Yeah.
be so great if we all everybody won this week.
Oh, man.
And then we
awesome.
roll it all over.
Yeah. Oh, is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
That seems dangerous, but I like that.
I know.
We're
You
going
like
to be on
danger.
tilt.
Yeah.
I like it. I love
Yeah.
I love going on tilt. Just push it.
Yeah.
Push it, baby.
I do wish that we could have got some of the goofy props though. Like Usher's shirt color, I think is going to be white.
I mean, there's right. So like
Yeah.
you can give some feedback on that, like over under on the national anthem.
The national anthem, I think, is like a minute 26
Right.
for the Luke Combs. I don't know what I picked. So for anyone listening, if I don't know, you both want to join, we're doing just like a goofy prop sheet with some buddies.
I'm in.
You guys want in for
Oh,
sure.
I'm in
but
for sure.
It's the player props and the goofy props, which I absolutely love. Like
a little combination of some real
dude,
plays there with some fun stuff.
Like what's the first song that Usher's gonna play at halftime? I picked DJ Got Us Falling in Love.
Ooh.
Great one.
Right?
Good one.
Great one.
Yeah. Like everyone wants to say it's gonna be yeah. I say no. You know what I mean?
He was practicing
Yeah.
that one on the way over.
No,
You know
that
it's
was
not.
on the spot.
You know it's not Burn.
Yeah, that's kind of not. Yeah,
It's not the vibe.
yeah, not the vibe.
I think will come in at some point.
Yeah,
like
it's coming in
middle
for
of
sure.
the-
Yeah, he's
Oh,
not.
yeah.
middle
Yeah,
of the set there. Yeah, I think it'll be good.
Yeah, we're probably getting
See,
some
now.
Lil-
Now I'm just going to keep saying yeah.
You're probably getting some Lil Jon in there too, which
Yeah.
is gonna be nice. I mean, you can't do yeah without
gonna
Lil
be
Jon.
nice.
Yeah, and then
keep on.
what's the Gatorade color?
I think it's going to be orange.
Dude, I was gonna say orange.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I haven't thought this much about Gatorade color. My favorite Gatorade is blue, so I'll go with the blue.
I've never done like the goofy props in
Dude,
the Super Bowl. It
you
sounds
gotta
fun.
look. Yeah, it's fun, and you got to look into it too. Like when they actually, because the data's all there too. Like it's like hasn't been purple in like 16 years, the Gatorade bath or something like that, and then like or that was like 2 years ago, and then it was purple. like it was like plus 1,700 odds or something like that, and it was purple.
That's amazing.
Those are fun ones just to fire.
So silly.
Yeah.
Like my wife does not gamble at all, but it's like around the Super Bowl time, I'm always like, all right, let's just fire $1, $2 on some of these super big odds just to say like, all right, because that way it's just
first
more fun
commercial.
it's more fun when you're watching.
Yeah.
And then we do all these like player prop, like all these big bets every week, and then you win on the ones that are like so stupid.
Yeah.
That happened in the Kentucky Derby this year. My wife just said, hey, I want to put a bet in on this horse. I ended up winning. I had like 10 bets the other way that did not win. It was like, why'd you pick that horse? It was like, well, I just like the name. I'm sitting here reading through stats on like what horse I think is going to win. But
no, don't read horse
that
racing
just shows
stats.
you that
That's
the
tough.
betting is just
You win more when you know nothing about
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was great.
This is so much fun.
I mean, this was historically, the NBA trade deadline is one of my favorite days of the year. Today, not so much, but it feels better to be sitting here and talking about it with you guys as we lament together.
Yeah, and Steve, we're glad you were able to be our first guest. Steve's
is
using
an honor.
Steve's using the guest mic here, which is
Yeah, hopefully it sounds okay.
I'm sure
Yeah,
it'll be great.
hopefully. That sound
Yeah,
half the podcast.
yeah, as he's coughing over here.
Yeah, right.
But again, that's what this podcast is. You're going to hear real noises. You're going to hear real things. Like we're real people. We're in my basement right now, just recording this podcast.
Yeah.
Like that's what makes this great. Like all these guests we're going to have on. Steve will definitely be back. You'll hear us reference him a ton. Just very like knowledgeable in sports, obviously. But like we want to make sure this thing isn't just Wilson and I every week. We want to make sure we're bringing in other people to give their thoughts and opinions because that's what makes a good podcast is having different opinions. But Steve, you were awesome tonight. We're
Thanks,
glad
man.
you're here.
Yeah, dude, I'm happy to be here.
We would love to have you back.
I'm telling you, let's do the sleepover pod. Right? This basement's big sleepover energy.
Sleepover live stream.
Yeah. Dude.
Talking about wrestling, perfect.
Yeah.
We don't
Steve's
have
a
to
big
talk about wrestling,
guy.
but we can play NWO Revenge on N64 on that big screen in there.
Okay, love it.
That'd be
I have
right.
that game. I have
I
that
know
game.
you have that
Yeah.
game. That's what I'm talking about.
We should do a top sports video game pod.
Oh, dude, that'd be sick. Yeah.
See,
Good idea.
These
Yep.
topics just come to us on a weekly basis, which is great. So
All right, it's 10:15. I gotta go to bed.
Yeah, same.
All right, we'll see you guys pretty soon on Take the Points. Love it. Peace.